All right, we're getting the green light to get started. We'll let in the latecomers as they straggle in. Maybe they're just waiting on their coffee or something. That's fine.
Totally understandable.
Got a good crowd.
Tight schedule here.
We're looking good. We got the green light to get started. So, hey, welcome everybody. It's Civic Saturday in Nebraska. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm the Director of Communications at Civic Nebraska.
And I'm Kathy Steinauer Smith, and we are joining you here from our home in Lincoln this morning. Thank you so much for coming. We are very happy you're here. It's a beautiful sunny morning in Nebraska, and it hasn't all been sunny this week, so we're very happy to have some sunlight to kind of reinvigorate everything as we get ready for spring. Things are turning green. It's getting warmer.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Our yard is more green than brown now. It was more brown than green until about Thursday.
Definitely this morning.
And speaking of renewal, we're looking for some civic renewal today. That's what Civic Saturday is all about. And for those of us who are joining us for the first time, here's what you can expect, okay? This is a place to come together in civic community, to be inspired and to be encouraged to reflect and to connect and create new civic traditions that are not only bringing people together, but also joyful. There's a lot of joy in this. We always hear that. You know, on the other end of things, if you follow politics, it's been an eventful week in Nebraska. There's been a lot of news and a lot of headlines involving the congressman who represents Lincoln and a former Nebraskan who's married to one of our Supreme Court justices. And to be perfectly honest with you, neither of these stories, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, has felt particularly good. And they threaten, really, that feeling threatens to undermine our faith in our democratic institutions. So I'm really glad you're here because we think Civic Saturday is an antidote to this toxin. Civic Saturday is a reminder that we can and we must take an active role in shaping the future of our communities and of our country. So believe it or not, this is Civic Nebraska's 9th Civic Saturday, dating back to 2019. And we see a lot of familiar faces out there. Thank you. And many new faces too. So thanks for coming. We're glad you're here. So we're going to have music, original poetry. We're going to have some readings of civic texts, right? Mm-hmm. And a civic sermon from yours truly, which is going to be on our theme. And we're calling today's theme, Begin Again.
And then to finish up, we will have some very informal breakout discussions that we call civic circles. And in our experience, they've been the most energizing and valuable, engaging part of Civic Saturday. So please grab your coffee, hang around to chat and listen to your fellow participants as we finish with our singing and our reading and our reflecting this morning.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Let's get to it, shall we? Today's civic poet is Jordan Charlton. Jordan is a doctoral student at the University of Nebraska, and his focus is in creative writing and poetry. Jordan teaches in the university's Institute for Ethnic Studies. He serves as the nonfiction editor of the Prairie Schooner Literary Journal, and he's program manager of the Nebraska Writers Collective's prison writing workshop, which is called Writer's Block. Jordan, welcome back to Civic Saturday.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for another opportunity to join. This is, I believe, my 3rd Civic Saturday that I've had the pleasure of being involved with, whether as a reader or as just an audience member and a guest, and they've all been really great. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity, thankful to be here with everyone and have this opportunity to engage in those civic circles, just like Kathy was mentioning just a moment ago. Hi, hey there. So I'd like to read 2 poems, thinking about the theme, just as Steve was saying, but I always like to think of a poem that inspires me in my everyday reading and writing life. So I'm going to start with one poem that is not my own. It comes from Michael Kleber Diggs in his newest book, Worldly Things. I'm going to drop the title there in the chat. So it's Michael Kleber Diggs's Worldly Things. And I think especially thinking about, how spring might be, just coming up just over the bend, just outside this window, just outside many of our windows even. I'm going to start with this first poem called Coniferous Fathers. by Michael Cleaver Diggs. Let's fashion gentle fathers, expressive, holding us how we wanted to be held before we could ask, singing off-key lullabies written for us, songs every evening like possibilities, fathers who say, this is how you hold a baby, but never mention a football. Say nothing in that moment. Just bring us to their chest naturally without shyness. Let's grow fathers from pine, not oak, coniferous fathers, raising us in their shade, fathers soft enough to bend, fathers who love us like their fathers couldn't, fathers who can talk about menstruation while playing a game of pepper in the front yard. No, take baseball out. Let's discover a new sort, fathers as varied and vast as a superior forest. Let's kill off sternness and play down wisdom. Give us fathers of laughter and fathers who cry, fathers who say, check this out, or I'm scared, or I'm sorry, or I don't know. Give us fathers strong enough to admit they want to be near us. They've always wanted to be near us. Give us fathers desperate for something different. Not Johnny Appleseed, not even Atticus Finch. No more Rolling Stones. No more lazy boy dads reading newspapers in some other room. Let's create folklore side by side, in garden, singing psalms about abiding, just that, abiding, being steadfast, present, evergreen, and ethereal. Let's make the old needles soft enough for us to rest on, dream on, next to them. Thank you. So I love that poem. You know, Michael Cleaver Diggs' Worldly Things is a lovely collection about re-seeing our communities and re-seeing, you know, for Diggs, his role as a father, his role in a family, just again, beginning again. I think when I was looking at poems, I noticed I had this one poem and I said, oh, I think this relates a little bit to that one. So this is one of mine. This is a poem that I wrote in the summer of 2020 in the midst of, I think Steve called it like the before times, right? Or in the middle of that transition. And this is called Epistle for My Unborn Child. I watch a friend FaceTime her goddaughter while we drink beers at the kitchen table after dinner. They spoke like old friends. I introduced myself to the child, told her my name, and she told me hers, returning a wide, almost toothless grin. I do not remember her name at all, as I don't remember yours either. I'm writing to you now because I thought of you then as I silently cried over the shoulder of my friend, my face out of the view of the screen. She didn't notice at all, my friend, because when she spoke to that little girl, it seemed like only they existed, like there was no space outside of the one they shared, although they were states away. I was standing in that moment and unsure what to do with myself. So I gathered up the empty beer bottles, their hollow necks clinking between my fingers, hoping not to set a bad example. And I did this with a care I do not know by name, a care I will call parental, although I and her goddaughter are not related. I will call the care maternal, because that is the only kind of love I've known. This is the truth, unborn child of mine. I've never known a father's love, and I must share this story with you soon after. I fear I'm incapable of the something I need to love you. Incapable of translating my mother's love into a language my tongue won't know until it's ready to speak. Thank you, everyone. That's my poem.
Jordan, that's amazing. That's amazing. You know, coming off that poem, I'm reminded why Jordan is one of my favorite and our favorite people. Jordan brings cleverness and its wisdom to his work that I wish I would have had at his age. And here's the other thing too. It's really impressive that Jordan has committed the amount of time required in developing at least one original poem for Civic Saturday, because in addition to this and all of his other commitments, he's planning a wedding as well. And so congratulations and thank you, Jordan, for sharing your wonderful words with us today.
Thank you again so much, and all the best to all those plans and everything you have going on. Thanks for sharing with us today. Now we're going to turn to Nancy Petito, and it's time for our first reading of Civic Scripture. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me for another Civic Saturday. My name is Nancy Petito, and I'm the Director of Civic Health Programs at Civic Nebraska. Writer and activist Rebecca Solnit is the author of more than 20 books, including 2009's A Paradise Built in Hell. In this groundbreaking work, Solnit asserts that the most startling thing about disasters is not that so many people rise to the occasion in response, but that they do so with joy. This, she says, reveals an unmet yearning for community, purposefulness, and meaning. So here is a passage from A Paradise Built in Hell. There is no money in what is aptly called free association. We are instead encouraged by media and advertising to fear each other and regard public life as a danger and a nuisance, to live in secured spaces, communicate by electronic means, and acquire our information from the media rather than each other. But in disaster, people come together. And though some fear this gathering as a mob, many cherish it as an experience of a civil society that is close enough to paradise. In contemporary terms, privatization is largely an economic term for the consignment of jurisdictions, goods, services, and powers, railways, water rights, policing, education, to the private sector and the vagaries of the marketplace. But this economic privatization is impossible without the privatization of desire and imagination that tells us we are not each other's keeper. Disasters, in returning their sufferers to public and collective life, undo some of this privatization, which is a slower, more subtle disaster all its own. In a society in which participation, agency, purposefulness, and freedom are all adequately present, a disaster would only be a disaster. Few speak of paradise now, except as something remote enough to be impossible. The ideal societies we hear of are mostly far away or long ago, or both, situated in some primordial society before the fall, or a spiritual kingdom in a remote Himalayan vastness. The implication is that we here and now are far from capable of living such ideals. But what if paradise flashed up among us from time to time, at the worst of times? What if we glimpsed it in the jaws of hell? These flashes give us, as the long ago and far away do not, a glimpse of who else we ourselves may be and what else our society could become. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy. Those are really important words, and from a really great book that I read during the pandemic.
Did you? Yeah.
It's an excellent work about the importance of organizing and mutual aid. And so thank you. Thanks so much, Nancy.
I didn't know you read that during the pandemic.
I did.
Now I want to read it, but I don't want the pandemic.
I can't remember what all happened during the pandemic. Anyway.
If we were meeting in person, this would be the part of the program where we would conduct what we call a turn and talk. It's a prompt question, followed by a one-on-one discussion with the person sitting next to you. We're not going to create 19 different one-on-one breakout rooms. I'm going to take it easy on our technical support today. So in this virtual space, we'd love if you would turn to our old buddy, the chat, for this, if you're so inclined. Weigh in on the chat on this question. When do you feel the most renewed? Again, that's when do you feel the most renewed?
It's a time of spring. It's a time of renewal, right?
Yeah, let's see your thoughts in the chat if you like. All right, while we're doing that, let's have some music, shall we?
I think music sounds good.
It's my honor to introduce our civic musician today. Jonathan Leach of Lincoln. And Jonathan, we've seen him perform many times. He tells such wonderful stories through his music. He's known to say that music is all about choices. I love that. That's what makes it so powerful to him and so consequential to him. Jonathan loves to have the opportunity to create something new every time he plays, and then to continue to evolve as the world around him does too. That's a perfect philosophy for Civic Saturday, I think. So it was really just a matter of time until we came onto a connection course with Mr. Jonathan Leach. Hey, Jonathan, welcome.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of this. I am a firm believer in beginning again as many times as you can. So yeah, I look forward to hearing more and playing a little bit. This is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which feels appropriate as we look to a hopeful future. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, high above the chimney tops is where you'll find somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh, why can't I? Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, high above the chimney tops is where you'll find somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
Thank you, Jonathan. That was lovely. Hi, my name is Ali Christensen, and I'm a community organizer with Collective Impact Lincoln, and I'm here today to read you a piece by Vincent Harding. Vincent Harding was a historian and a scholar of American religion and society. As a social activist, Harding was perhaps best known for his work with and writings about Martin Luther King Jr., whom he knew personally. 10 years ago in Cincinnati, Ohio, Harding spoke on a national panel that was discussing national and racial healing. And in sharing his words of scripture with you, I want to acknowledge that as a white woman, I'm calling on fellow white folks to do the work that Harding is calling upon us to do. Here's what he said. I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist. That's who I see you all as being, especially you younger folks, but not confined to you younger folks. You're citizens of a country that we still have to create, a just country, a compassionate country, a forgiving country, a multiracial, multi-religious country, a joyful country that cares about its children and about its elders, that cares about itself and about the world, that cares about what the earth needs, as well as what individual people need. I am, you are, a citizen of a country that does not yet exist and that badly needs to exist. That's connected, you see, to Langston Hughes, the poet. America, you've never been American to me, he said. And we can always stop there and complain and complain and complain. You've never been America to me. But remember, Langston did not stop there. America, you've never been America to me, but I swear this oath, you will be. I want you, those of you who are not afraid to swear oaths, to swear that oath for yourself, for your children, and for your old uncle here. You will be America. You'll be what you could be. You will be what you should be. And you will say, I'm going to give my life working for that. Thank you.
I love that passage. And it just came during a conference at a table. And it didn't sound like he prepared it. It just came out. And it's amazing what happens when you can speak from the heart. Vincent Harding, God rest his soul. So here we are at the turning of another season. We're starting our annual stretch toward the sun. That feels good, doesn't it? Let's celebrate the fact, folks, that our days are now officially more light than dark. And that the earth, well, at least our little part of it, is starting to come back to life. And not surprisingly, we have a lot of new beginnings around this time scheduled into our calendars, don't we? Spring cleaning, start of baseball season, thankfully, planting and gardening. I'd even throw in the red-white spring game this year because, man, if anything needs a hard reboot, it's that crew over at Memorial Stadium, don't you think? You know, it's also said that we Americans, we embody the optimism that this season brings. We as a people. And we do have this unique American capacity for newness, of looking forward and kind of setting sentimentality aside. In many ways, we do seem to value this possibility of something new over old attachments. What's funny, I think, is that for as familiar this is to us, this attitude is relatively new, at least in the long history of humanity. If you look, really zoom out and take the very long view, the innate belief that things can and should be better just isn't the way civilizations have worked over the eons. The concept of human progress only goes back, if you think about it, to the Enlightenment. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years before that, most societies, they just assumed the good times were over, that any progress or development or growth was behind them. And anything good that might happen was just kind of random and fluky. Geez, that's depressing. That's depressing. But regardless how depressing it is, it's a powerful human legacy to overcome. I would say that even our optimistic our optimistic American mindsets can't fully escape this. And in recent years, if you zoom in too closely on the news, some would even say that this cynicism's starting to win. And we can feel this. We can feel this today. It's okay to admit it. There's no shortage of unease about the changing state of our country and about the breathless speed of disruption we're all experiencing, whether it's technological, cultural, social. You get a real sense that this grand experiment of ours, it's approaching another really big moment, isn't it? It's in the air. It's in the air. And we're all wondering which way it's going to break. That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, there's these dueling narratives. You've got one that says we're either emerging from a pandemic with a roaring economy and a meaningful opportunity to put it to work for everyone. We're at peace for the first time in 20 years, and we're reaching for something new and exciting. Or we're stuck in a disaffected loop of disease and recession and isolation and malaise and unrest. And we're fighting a new Cold War now that's pushing prices up and pulling our social fabric apart. Which is it? Well, not to be flip, but the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Nothing is ever so clear-cut, is it? And of course, we know this. We know this. America, for want of a better word, is messy. Today, as we peek around the corner at what's next, we should probably remind ourselves of this and keep this top of mind. Because throughout our story, we have rebooted ourselves over and over and over. And each time, yes, we have summoned something great. But at the same time, it has never been simple. So today, I'd like to go back to the very beginning, that amazing time at and around the founding, to learn and talk a little bit about what truly made America, America in those days. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about a time called that some people call the Second Founding, which is another amazing time, that period between Civil War and Reconstruction, to learn what truly remade America in those days. And last, if we really, really are on the precipice of something big and new, then let's talk a little bit about what maybe a third founding might look like, what that might be. Okay, our first founding, we know the story. Do I really need to go into this? Taxation without representation. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Valley Forge, Yorktown, the Constitutional Convention, we the people. There's your speed history of the American founding. But this does really give short shrift to the extraordinary start of our story and how different it was from how the world worked back then. Those 11 years between Declaration and Constitution, this was a golden age of reason. And this golden age of reason, by the way, didn't just drop out of the sky. When the colonists finally declared independence, they'd already spent years, decades wrestling with big moral questions that were emerging in America. What is our guiding virtue? Is our cause rooted in justice? Is this the right thing to do? Every July 4th, the bangs and the booms of our fireworks might echo the armed struggle to free ourselves militarily from Britain's grasp. But if we were actually being true to the spirit of 76, we'd read, we'd think, and we'd debate. I don't know how well that goes with barbecues, but I'd give it a shot. Our founders put themselves through all the paces so that by the time we got to the point of declaring independence, by the time we got to 7/4/76, the intellectual and moral foundations of a new nation had been built. For want of a better way of saying it, this nation was born on civic virtue, a personal devotion to the success of the whole. And as citizens in this nation, that means a moral society requires good citizens who live more for one another than for their own interests. So when that break was made, all the signers swore to it, right? Pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to one another. But our history is messy. Over the next decade, we became the United States of America in despite of, well, maybe not only because of, those mythic heroes that we learn about in our history books, right? George Washington, great guy. He was an objectively mediocre military tactician. He was prone to indecision and fits of anger. The one really good thing he was at was ordering retreats. He saw his best general turn traitor and go over to the British. Later in the war, he barely dodged a plot among his own officers to take over, to decapitate his command and take over. The Continental Congress, that sweeping picture you always see of them in Philadelphia, it's a nice myth, never happened. Wasn't exactly an inspiring group of philosopher kings, this crew. A few years into the war, the Continental Congress was broke, corrupt, and dysfunctional. Any civic leader worth his salt, well, is back in his home state, helping to run their respective state governments, where the power really lay. So that over-romanticized spirit of 76 had dwindled away. Most days, the National Congress couldn't even form a quorum, much less govern. So guess who it fell to then? The people. You guessed correctly. Up and down the continent, they took it upon themselves to form and then hold together this new nation, from farm to town to city. Early Americans, they set aside, again, their personal interests and regional rivalries for what became known as the common cause. Esther Reed is a good example of this. Does anyone remember Esther? Anyone? During the war, she rallied American women to donate their time, their talent, and their treasure to the common cause. She started the Ladies Association of Philadelphia, love the name. And they banged on doors across the city. They cajoled people to give them money. And with it, they bought fabric and linen, and they sewed clothes for the Continental Army. She made sure every volunteer seamstress embroidered their names into the clothes that they sent to the soldiers. I love that. It's kind of like an early USO. At the time, she wrote this: "If opinion and manners did not forbid us women to march to glory by the same paths as men, well, we should at least equal and sometimes surpass them in our love for the public good." Love for the public good. There it is, civic love. It was clear at this point in early America, it wasn't just who we were fighting against. It was what we were fighting for. So this is how we began. This powerful commitment to civic virtue. It created a unique republic, a never done before republic, and an extremely flawed republic. Because history is messy, and our history is messy. For all the talk of the common good and civic morals in early America, our national story is still quite difficult to resolve at this point, isn't it? The liberty-loving people who claimed all men were free and equal, well, they made some pretty big exceptions, didn't they? And they set out to expand their free republic on the backs of enslaved people. It took 80 and 10 more years for America to even begin to reckon with that. So now we come to the second founding, America 2.0. Secession, emancipation, Gettysburg, Appomattox Courthouse, John Wilkes Booth, Reconstruction. And the Reconstruction Amendments, right? 13, 14, and 15. Their arrival in our Constitution finally affirmed the Declaration's call for equality, equal protection under the law, equal right to vote, the right to count as an equal American. To paraphrase President Lincoln, It was a new birth of freedom. It was a violent birth, but nonetheless. And it's altogether proper to focus on Abraham Lincoln when talking about this time, a period when our great state came into being, of course. Sitting here in Nebraska's capital city that is named in his honor, it's hard to escape his legacy. I mean, think about it. He saved the Union. He freed the slaves, right? But Lincoln also gave America something very important. He gave America an enduring civic religion. To reunite this country, he leaned into that civic virtue that had been unleashed by the Declaration. He called for devotion to union, devotion to rule by constitution and law, not by men or demagogues, devotion to the unifying bonds of democratic citizenship, devotion to our national purpose. Devotion. Yeah, that's another way of saying love, I suppose. Civic love. But our history is messy. We won the war. We lost the peace. Assassination, a new president with Southern sympathies, the stoking of regional hatreds, rise of Jim Crow. We came out of the Civil War hoping to build a utopia built on equality. We got something else instead, didn't we? And we know this because we're still arguing over so many of the same issues today. Think about it. Voting rights, immigration, true equality. The second founding is still unfinished. It's still unfinished. There's still a lot of work to do. So let's finish by talking about that work, about what can be next, shall we? So today I've summoned two extraordinary chapters in our American story. And both, of course, involved, you'll notice, consequential wars on our own soil. One came about because American democracy was inevitable. The other because American democracy failed abjectly. So I'd like to stipulate that these times, this is not those times, okay? These times are not those times. And we should not assume that another major armed conflict is just predestined, okay? In fact, I'd be willing to wager that if it won't even come close to that. I'm a firm believer in cooler heads continuing to prevail. I am. But the relative peace we enjoy today doesn't mean that we're at peace, does it? Disaster, yeah, it has a lot of children. And today we find ourselves amid any number of subtler, slower rolling crises. And, you can just spin the wheel. Climate trouble, income inequality, the creeping authoritarianism we see in our states. He said it's in the air, isn't it? It's in the air. But nothing is preordained. And it would be our mistake, I think, to look at what's already happened as some kind of magic wayfinder for what's about to occur. Our history is messy. Our future probably will be too, but that doesn't mean we can't do something about it. And from today's examples, I also think we can assume a couple of things. One is the power of civic virtue, the idea of fighting for the common good. Remember, this is deep in our American DNA. It's old and it's true. If you are an American, you have civic virtue deep within you. And the day is coming when we will all need to summon it in a new common cause. Well, some people say that day is already here. Another is the fact that, you can change the Constitution and you can create more equal arrangements of power within our society. But changing as a people is much more difficult. Even in a fast-forward world, individuals still change slowly, which is why history is messy. I understand why some people and some of us look at the world today and say, okay, we've gone far enough, no more change, okay? Can we just take a beat? I get it. No more change. But change is coming. It's the one constant in our universe. Einstein, who was no stranger to cosmic laws, once said, "No problem can be solved from the same consciousness that created it." This should ring in our ears today. And it should make us ask some hard questions as we think about what's coming next. What if, instead of laws designed to bring back an era that never actually existed in this country, we unleash the power of people to innovate on behalf of our democracy, to act on behalf of our highest national principles? What if, when considering big national projects, whether it's legislation or a shared goal of some sort, we set aside the toxic pragmatism of what we call political reality? What if we defined realistic as it was supposed to be intended to define, within our capacity to do? What if we were not to just see America as it is, but how it could be, how it could really be, as the first truly multicultural, multi-ethnic, truly pluralistic republic in the history of the world? Think about that. Think about that. By the most amazing turn of fate, a tiny slice of all the matter in our universe came together to create us all right now so that we could be here right now. For the briefest moment in the great span of human history, all of us have this privilege to exist together at this time, to embark on something that has never, ever been done before. What an awesome opportunity. We would be fools to waste it. And I don't know, maybe a lot of it will look familiar. Our institutions and our processes, probably still going to be imperfect, but rebuilt for modern complexity. Our public square, peaceful and robust and networked and inclusive, and rendering discourse at the speed of light. Citizens firmly asserting their individual rights, but also deeply reaffirming their responsibilities in what is an ever interconnected, ever interdependent world. And yeah, all the while, we can ask those big moral questions that have been with us since the very, very beginning. What is our guiding virtue? Is our cause rooted in justice? Is this the right thing to do? So here we are at the turning of another season. It's a time of birth and renewal. And we are setting out to begin America again. An America that is bolder and freer and more just. And yes, more loving than the version we're leaving behind. That's the cause. That's the work. So to paraphrase President Lincoln again, let us strive on to finish the work that we are in. Or in this case, let's begin it. Thank you.
Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see all your life. You're only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly. Blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
That was great.
That was, that was beautiful, Jonathan. Thank you. We have a little Ellie
Yeah,
here providing us some comfort too.
we have a, it is Saturday also. Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing the power, the optimism, and the word to Civic Saturday. Before we head into Civic Circles, we'd like to thank all of us, all of the performers who joined us today. Thank you again, Jonathan, for the incredible music,
So well done.
Jordan for the beautiful poetry, and thank you to Nancy and Allie for reading those inspiring readings today.
As always, I would like to give a special shout out to Daniel Bennett, who is quarterbacking the technical aspects of today's gathering. Thank you, DB the QB, as I like to call him. Daniel is currently working to build some breakout rooms for our Civic Circles, so we're going to give Daniel a round of applause. Well done, my man. Most of all, friends, thank you. Civic Saturday is not possible without all of you being here and recommitting to being powerful, active citizens. And now you're up. We'll be heading into our small groups so we can end with a little discussion among ourselves before we all head out into the world, right? So if you'd like to sit back and bear witness too in your small groups, that's okay. There's no pressure, there's no real structure to it, and there's no report out. It's just for y'all. Here's your civic discussion prompt, okay? We ask you to think about this one thing. What is one thing you can do this week in the spirit of civic renewal? Okay? What is one thing you can do this week in the spirit of civic renewal? DB's dropped it into the chat, or somebody has. I guess Allie dropped it in the chat there for you, so you can reference it there if you need it later. And then we'll be going there. I can see DB working furiously.